It all started a few days ago when a long-awaited guest arrives, is greeted by the whole staff, and everything is going on in the best possible way. She is immediately thanked for such a long journey, which not everyone would agree to. She is very welcome here and tries her best to create comfort from the first second of being in this place. The man says he recently overheard by chance from Madame N that a guest, Mrs. Leah, will be living here all summer. He asked to consider it impertinent to ask how true this is. First of all, Leah Owen, the owner of the Owen family, expressed her gratitude and said it was a pleasure to meet them. And then confessed that she would really have to stay a long time, as she had just run away from her husband and the mansion belonged to a friend of hers. Despite all that, her relationship appeared to be perfect. Everyone dreamed of being in her shoes and did not understand what she was constantly dissatisfied with. But from the very beginning, this marriage for her was not desirable. Her husband Edgar was not only inattentive to his family and work and was always busy going out with other women, but he also had many faults, which Leah could hardly tolerate. In addition to all this, the girl had to take care of his seriously ill mother. She had to be with her literally at all times, and when she went away on her own, it was considered disrespectful. She herself does not know why, but a little time passed and she forgave all this, and all because she just wanted to be a good wife and deserve a little good treatment in her side. But every time, everything worked in the opposite direction. In return, she got back only insults. For example, he often liked to compare her with other girls and a young princess. Edgar wanted to marry the princess of the kingdom. He not only ruined her life, he sold the lands for cash, used the money to give the princess a coming-of-age gift, and offered his wife a divorce. The girl sometimes remembers where everything started and still can't believe how she stood it all, and why she didn't value her time and herself as a person so much. At this point, the girl does not quite understand how she can achieve what she has dreamed of all her life. But in any case, the sooner she leaves this man, the better it will be for her. No matter how hard she tries to change him or correct him for the better, it will never happen. Her desire is enough. He must want it. As it may sound, the man offered her a divorce and confessed that he hasn't loved her for a long time and doesn't see the point in the relationship. Leah refused and didn't even voice the reason for her decision, although everything was going to be better for everyone. She explains to herself in her mind that she can't just give him a divorce and agree to it, because first she has to gather evidence for the court, which means she's up to something. And that's not all. She still has to avoid being talked about. So until the summer season in high society comes to an end, she'll try to buy time. And when the summer is over, everything will fall into place. The girl is confident in her plans, actions, and in general that it will lead her to something good, although from the outside it is not quite clear what her plan is exactly. The situation is too confusing. She is in a marriage where she is unhappy, but at the same time, when her husband proposes divorce and she knows about his mistresses, she does not let him do it. She also delays the time. Hopefully she'll get the benefit and it won't all be for nothing. She wants to be happy, but so far she's stopped by the idea that being alone will only make her worse, although she's very wrong about that. Meanwhile, while walking through the area near the forest, she heard some sound and turned around, but after that, there was nothing there anymore. She even thought someone nearby was looking at her. She felt the stare and she wasn't quite sure what it was. Leah relaxed and stopped paying attention. She wanted to enjoy the atmosphere, to feel the energy of the forest, and in general, to free her thoughts from all these problems, at least for a while. It's been a long time since she's had such a reset, and for nothing, because even walking in a quiet area can really improve your well-being, reduce anxiety, and also, in such moments, genius thoughts often come to you. Living for many years in a noisy city, the girl did not even think that if you go outside of it, you can see such incredible beauty. Here she feels peace and realizes how happy people living here must be. She would give anything just to move to a quiet place and live in such an environment. Everything is beautiful around here. Here, a girl forgets all the bad things. she can't stop admiring everything around her and realizes that she's clearly been living in the wrong place all this time. She feels so much better here and doesn't even want to go back. Just when her eyes were starting to go wide and she was a little distracted, she was approached by a forest dweller who clearly didn't look like a cute pet. His eyes are still glowing red and give the impression that she is either going to be very lucky and he will pass by, or the girl will stay in the same place, become his prey, and will not go anywhere else. Only after a while she heard a suspicious sound and realized that she was not alone. It was a stray dog, which was obviously very hungry and would not pass by. First of all, the girl tried not to panic. Although looking into those crazy eyes filled with hunger and hatred, it seems that the situation is absolutely hopeless. This beast can attack at any moment. She has thoughts of running away, but she'll probably make it worse. The dog will catch up with her anyway, so she'll have to think of something else. He started attacking her, growling and acting like the girl didn't stand a chance. The dog pounced and got even crazier. Literally, at the very last moment, when he was already a millimeter away from her, a second dog appeared, which protected the girl and took the entire blow on itself. The crazy dog bit her, and Leah remained unharmed. Though just that I had already resigned myself to the fact that she was going to have a lot of bites on her and probably wouldn't survive at all after that. But suddenly, a miracle happened, and she was saved. Really wondering what it was just now, Leah dropped to the floor in surprise and started looking at them, for it was all up to that dog now. But it seems it's a bit different from what she saw. It wasn't a dog. It was a real huge black panther that is clearly kinder than that dog. We can only hope it did it to protect and not to keep that prey for itself. So far, she has very kind eyes, but the fact that it's also a predator doesn't calm Leah down in any way. She's still tense and doesn't know how to act. Started coming closer and closer. She's acting calm enough for the girl to calm down and start panicking like before time. Leah tries to move further away from her, but she's still getting closer. Eventually, the girl realized that there was no danger. She thanked the panther and even started stroking it like a little kitten. They became friends very quickly, and the atmosphere became less tense. It felt like the girl had found a new friend, although now it was unclear how to go home. The whole time Leah is silent and trying to figure out what this panther is going to do next. She even helped her up and gave her a very kind look. At one point, the girl asked if she could go home already, to which the panther closed and opened her eyes, thus answering her question and allowing her to do so. Leah realized this animal understood everything. She thanked her last and told her she would try to come back to her place and take a walk when she had free time. And at the very last moment, when they were saying goodbye, she saw an arrow in her leg and was very much surprised, for she had not noticed it at all during that time. She felt so sorry for the panther that she wanted to go home with her and get help. But how best to do that without scaring anyone would have to be thought about. She only reached to put that arrow away, at least try to do so, as the panther immediately started to get angry and prevented her from doing so. Of course, Leah didn't continue and stepped further away. Then she tried to talk to her to explain that other people could help her. You just had to go along with her and ask for help. But she turned around and walked off deep into the woods. It is possible that she just does not want to see other people. Many animals are afraid and perceive them as enemies, so they often suffer from pain, such as in this situation. The girl didn't bother to catch up with her and decided that before it got dark and she was attacked by someone else, it was better to go home and be safe. She immediately told her what had happened, but the man only smiled. He didn't believe her and said that panthers live in the south and they don't and can't be here. Leah was indignant and asked why he didn't believe her. After all, she was telling the truth and had actually seen the panther with her own eyes, and she had also saved it. The man smiled again and assumed she had just mistaken it for a lynx. Leah wouldn't even listen to him. She read something was definitely a panther, and maybe even unusual since she saves people and understands their speech. Edgar once, while playing on the water at a kingdom festival, did not go to rescue her even though the boat capsized. Everyone just stood by and watched. No one even moved, as if they were just waiting for the girl to drown and not be able to save herself. Then she somehow miraculously managed to swim out by her own efforts. She even how it happened anyway. She only realized one thing. Some animals can be much kinder than some people. The next day it was so. She was looking forward to this moment very much and woke up much earlier than usual to see the... At first, she was very afraid to go, for she did not want to answer another mad dog. Besides, it is not known whether she would have succeeded in finding her at all, for the years are vast and she would rather have met someone else than hers. But it turned out they met much quicker than she thought. It was as if the panther had been waiting for her all along and hadn't gotten too far away. She was in about the same spot where they had said goodbye to her, but as soon as Leia decided to get closer, it was as if she got angry and wouldn't let her do it. Leia didn't understand what that meant, because last time they had said goodbye normally, and nothing had happened that would offend anyone. In that case, she had just gone home and decided to come again the next day, because suddenly the panther will not be in such a bad mood and will be happy to walk with her, or at least will not be angry. But this time nothing changed. The panther still avoided her, but Leia decided not to leave so quickly. She stayed to let the animal get used to her, and then she left after all. The next day the same thing happened. She constantly increased the time and stayed longer so that the girl did not forget her. Moreover, the girl noticed that as soon as she did not notice her and did not look in her direction, the panther follows her and walks after her as if she did not want to say goodbye. But if the girl only looked in her direction and came closer, the panther again resents her. It's all very strange, and no matter how hard she tries, nothing changes. But since she came with a basket this time, she had something for her. Leia asked her to stop and said she wanted to give her something. Of course, the panther immediately looked at her and wasn't so offended anymore. She couldn't ignore it anymore because Leia took out a piece of meat from the basket, which will not leave any animal indifferent. She is sure that the panther will appreciate this gift and won't be so angry anymore. But unfortunately, it didn't work out so easily, and not at all as she expected. The girl approached her with this piece of meat, but she got no reaction whatsoever. The panther didn't react in any way. It was as if she turned away on purpose and made it clear that it wouldn't fix the situation, and she wasn't interested in it. She left again in an unknown direction, and as soon as Leia saw that arrow in her leg again, she felt very sorry for her. She even thought of going to the doctor and coming here with him next time. Leia is already getting a little frustrated and even angry. No matter how hard she tries, nothing works. It seems like when she doesn't pay attention to her at all, the situation gets better. But is it really not worth it to her to help her out? In that case, she has no choice but to pretend she doesn't know her at all. She also began to take offense and go off in another direction. She walked around for a long time wondering how to get it to eat. She had the idea that maybe the injury might have made the panther lose its appetite, and that's why it didn't react to the meat in any way. Though as far as she knows, what animals are very fond of something like this, especially those that live in the woods and rarely find prey. And here she literally gave this piece and got no reaction. All very strange. The next day has come. It's another attempt to make things right. Though the girl doesn't even know approximately when she managed to offend her and what she might have disliked. She came to her and asked her how she'd never realized it before, because it was so elementary. As any animal is bound to have some preferences, today she brought not just one kind of meat for her, but several. There are 4 different kinds to choose from today, and there's sure to be something to suit your taste. Leia has no doubt about that. The panther ended up scattering these pieces all over the forest and didn't eat any of them. It was like she got even more angry, and the situation got even more confusing. In the end, since her escape to her friend's house a few days had passed, the girl had spent all her free time trying to mend her relationship with the panther. But so far there had been no change. Things had only gotten worse. Though she has decided that she will bravely prepare for the trial without wasting any time, her thoughts are only occupied with her new friend, who happens to be very fickle and resentful. Once she took the time to do the paperwork, it turned out There wasn't as much as she would have liked, and the savings were far less than she thought they would be. She hadn't wanted to bring much trouble to her friend from the start, and now she wondered how she could thank her for her hospitality. She knows from experience that when guests linger for too long, no matter how nice they are, sometimes it gets tiresome, and you want to be alone together. At one point, Leah thought of giving up. She crouched down on the floor out of desperation, because lately she hadn't gotten one step closer to what she had planned. Surprisingly, the more effort she puts into something, the faster it goes backwards. She doesn't have the energy and desire to think and plan. It seems easier to accept and do nothing. It was just a few seconds before she cried when suddenly another friend of hers came in, and surprisingly, she was in a good mood today. It was as if she sensed and came to the rescue at just the right moment. Leah stopped being sad. She forgot about her problems and was almost glad that the panther was finally treating her well, especially since she had come to support me. After that, she turned away from her and made the girl start to follow her. Leah asked if she understood her correctly. The panther turned around and signaled that it was correct. The lady was once again convinced that this was a special creature that clearly understood human speech, and she was definitely not imagining it. She then asked where they were going, and began to hope it wasn't too far away, as she had promised her friend she would be back early. Literally, after a while, they found themselves in a place so beautiful that she had never seen such a place in her entire life. It's very much like something that can't be in this world. It's like another universe. The girl couldn't even think that there could be such a place near here. If she knew, she would be here every day. Surprisingly, the forest, as it turned out, could be more than just trees and crazy dogs. There are live fish swimming in the river. The water is very clear, and everything around her looks like a picture from a fairy tale, but not the reality she is used to. There are even unusual flowers of her favorite color growing here. She immediately thought it would be beautiful to plant them near the house so she could wake up and be happy every time she saw them. Leah wondered if her panther friend had brought her here to be supportive, knowing how sad and lonely she was alone with her problems. Panther saw Leigh's smile and started to hug her. And in the end, everything became even better than it could be. It turns out that when you don't wait, help can appear out of nowhere. And also, everything can change at any moment, even when you are unbearably sad, and it seems that nothing can help you. The lady confessed that the panther is much kinder than most people she has met in her life. She has become a true friend who literally gives her the warmth and support that she has missed so much. Leah then suggested that she officially start being friends, unless of course the panther was okay with it and it wouldn't make her uncomfortable, because maybe she already had panther's friends and there was no way they could start this friendship. A few days later, the girl received a letter from her friend, who found out and wrote her a letter, which said that she had found out the reasons why Leah had been forced to run away to her house, and that Leah's husband had found her friend and demanded to know the whereabouts of his wife, or in other words, the address of her friend's house. When she met with this man, she immediately realized why her friend suffered so much in this relationship. He literally smells of negative energy that immediately wants to go somewhere else. Of course, she did not tell him what he so insistently demands. Instead, she began to ask her own questions, which only made this man angrier. Namely, what was the purpose of his interest in this information? And to keep everything under control. And the girl felt safe. Her husband, Count Ivan, was with her. As soon as the guest raised his voice at her, he made it clear that it was not worth doing so. The guest begins to resent because he realizes that everyone is against him. He does not know what to say and what to do to find his wife. No one is going to tell him the exact address, at least because it is N's house. The girl did not hide how she feels about him, and admitted that she has always been against this marriage, and more than once discouraged her friend to marry him. And as it turned out, she was right. Nothing good came out of it. In the meantime, in order not to stall for time, the girl asked the most important thing. What was the benefit for him in this divorce, and why he needed to do it so urgently? He doesn't want to do it because he's not in love with his wife, and Leah's friend realizes it. He responds by saying that they're all like her and that he just wants to end the relationship, and there's no hidden reason for it. At some point, the girl can't stand it and starts letting all her emotions out. She took the first thing she could get her hands on and said that she could tolerate his unfair and disrespectful treatment of her, but she would not tolerate being insulted in the direction of her friend. About this situation, the letter also said a few words that Lei's husband should be grateful that N had let him live at all. She was so angry at him that she didn't even know how best to get rid of him. But still, she wrote that her friend shouldn't be afraid of anything. She promised not to tell this man anything, even if he trapped her and demanded the information. They're such good friends that they each have no doubts about honesty and trust each other 100%. Reading this promise, Leah almost cried. She is very pleased that she can trust her and not doubt these words. The girl was finishing the last words of this letter, and literally on the last word the panther started to interrupt her. It put its tail on the sheet, as if it was starting to pay attention to itself. At first, Leah thought she was just bored, started to keep reading this letter, but the panther wouldn't stop. She continued to play with it, for the girl had already read the most important things, and now she had to make time for her, for it would soon be evening, and soon we would have to go back again. They were playing so much that Leah hurt herself, and it hurt so much that she got a red spot on her arm and a very unpleasant pain. The panther felt guilty and even stopped looking her in the eyes for a while, and then looked and let her know she was sorry for what happened. Then the girl asked her not to worry and told her it was okay. The panther then used her superpower, and as a result, it was as if the wound had never happened. There were no red spots on her arm, and the pain was gone in just a few seconds. The wound healed very imperceptibly, though Leia didn't even notice it right away. She of course knew that the panther was unusual, but she didn't know that she was so unusual and that she had such abilities. After that, she began to ask her for some information, for apparently, since she walks by herself without a pack, she is used to living alone and probably has no friends either. Leah meets such a kind and sweet panther for the first time. She is very happy to have met her, and now she can't imagine her life without her. This time she still dared and decided to try to get that arrow from her paw. But suddenly she got angry again and wouldn't let her near her even a millimeter, as if she still didn't trust her. She didn't look like herself. Leah stepped away from her right away and said she wouldn't do anything. Since she was fine with it, she wouldn't pull anything out. The girl thought that the panther was just afraid that it would be very painful. So, Leia only asked for a glance and promised that she wouldn't do anything about it. It took a little time. She begged her as hard as she could, and finally the cougar agreed. It was very hard, but she managed it nevertheless, and began to examine her from all sides, with that crazy big cat watching carefully to see that the girl did not deceive her. As it turns out, the arrow is sitting deeper than she thought. It's going to take a lot of effort to get it out, and even more effort to convince the panther to do it. When suddenly she noticed something unusual on this arrow. There's some writing on it that clearly means something. She just touched them, and something happened that no one expected. The arrow began to emit some kind of red glow, and then broke into small pieces and seemed to disappear into thin air. It was just incredible. It looked like Lei had some kind of healing ability too that she didn't know about before. Just a moment later, the girl somehow lost consciousness and fell to the floor. She helped the panther and herself, as if she had lost all her strength. Panther doesn't understand what that was and what she needs to do now. She certainly felt that she wasn't in as much pain anymore, but right now she's much more concerned with Leia's well-being and making sure she's all right. She began to come closer to her and tried to see if the girl was breathing or not, for it was very important. It was all very strange, for it had never happened to her before. Also, no one has any idea what this is about, and when it happens again, Leah lies there with her eyes closed and thus more and more frightening to the panther, who is there for her, and realizes that no one can help her right now. And if she doesn't do something right now, it might be too late. At that moment, she could do nothing but growl so hard that it was heard by the people living nearby, and it worked. The man Leah had been talking to recently heard some sound and immediately paid attention to it. He immediately realized that it was clearly an animal's scream, and the first thought he had was to hide or run away, because it could be dangerous. He asked his assistant to stay in the same place, and he went off somewhere and started to cautiously look around the manor. He couldn't even think that at this moment he would see Leia unconscious right in the yard. He was so surprised that he almost fainted and fell down beside her. So the panther was able to drag her to the house and quickly ran away without anyone noticing her anyway. At least someone could help her, and she wouldn't be alone in the woods all night long. The man immediately took her in his arms and began to think about what to do next. He realized that someone had brought her, but he didn't bother to look into it. It was more important to make the lady come to her senses. Then that boy ran up to them and started asking what was wrong. Since the man didn't come back to him, he realized that something had happened and didn't stand still. The man told his son that the young lady had fallen, and he didn't understand how she ended up here, and then asked him to hurry up and call a doctor, or at least someone who could help her. All the while that panther was looking at them, she made sure everything was okay and was finally able to calm down, because she definitely wouldn't have been able to handle it and wouldn't have been able to provide medical help. She is of course very sorry she couldn't do anything to help, but the important thing is that Leah is okay. She will definitely be taken care of, and something will be worked out for her. After that, the panther went deep into the forest and thought that until the girl came to her, it was better to keep a low profile so that nobody would see her. Because if people found out that there was an animal living in that forest, which could not be there, it would be a big sensation and everybody would go there, and it was not excluded that they would try to catch her and would perceive her as an enemy. She has been in bed for several days and unfortunately she has not woken up yet. The doctor has visited her several times but has not been able to find out what the cause is and when she will be able to wake up. The only thing he can say with absolute certainty is that despite his help and medication, her condition is not improving. He believes that this is an unusual disease. Accordingly, they should use unusual methods of treatment. At the same time, it is very risky to experiment and do something he is not sure of. He's more inclined to just monitor her condition, because maybe it's not as bad as it looks. But he'll tell the man that there's another possibility as to why she's still not recovered. There's a chance she's seriously cursed, and maybe some other specialist can help her. Meanwhile, her friend had already found out about the situation. She received a letter with terrible news that she could not ignore. She felt that something special had happened, and that there was not a moment to lose. She immediately started telling her husband about it and offered to go to her right away. As a friend, she wanted to support her and be there for her. She can't sit in one place. She realizes that Leah has almost no one but her. Moreover, she's sure that Edgar could be to blame, but for now, it's only a suspicion. The girl couldn't help herself and started crying. She has no idea how to help her friend and how serious it is. Her husband tried to keep calm, calmed her down and suggested to think it over and not to get too excited. He believes that in this condition, you don't need to go anywhere. You first need to figure out who could have done this to her and how they can help, even if they come to her right now. To which the girl replies that there is no way to be calm in such a situation. She says that even if Leah is freed from the curse, Edgar will not give up and again tries to destroy her in some other way. Her husband hugged her again and warned her that until they had definite information about who had done it, it was better to really take their time and spend that time not on emotion, but at least investigating or testing those assumptions. He realizes that his wife is very angry, so he offers her a rest and promises to sort things out. Meanwhile, the next day has arrived. Today there is an event, and among the invited guests you can see Leah's husband. He is holding a small red box and he is trying to hide it so that no one will pay attention to it. All this time he's been looking for the princess, as he's sure she must be here, but he still hasn't seen her. It turns out that this box contains a very beautiful piece of jewelry. It's a whole set consisting of earrings and a necklace, which every girl dreams about. This is another proof that while in a relationship, he loves a completely different person, and is ready for her even for such gifts. He dreams to be next to Princess Victoria, so does not miss any event where she can be, all men enchanted by her beauty. But he reads that only one man can be with her, and it is him. He dreams every day and imagines how this relationship would look like. He gives her gifts literally on every holiday, tries to make sure that she does not forget him and does it in every possible way. But at the same time, for his wife, he has not tried so hard since the very first day of their acquaintance, and gave gifts only when he was very guilty, and it was impossible to do without it. As he waited patiently for her appearance and shivered with excitement, someone came up to him, addressed him by name, and apologized for disturbing him. The guy didn't expect it. He turned around and saw a man he hadn't seen in a long time. He didn't even immediately recognize him and didn't understand how he could help him. This man, who approached him, started accusing him in front of everyone present of putting a curse on his wife, while running after the princess and trying to get her attention. It turns out that this man was the very husband of a friend who promised to sort out and find the villain. Apparently, he was not joking and was absolutely serious. He drew his sword and warned that at least without an apology, he will not leave here without an apology. Of course, they are the center of attention. Everyone is very interested to know what they are talking about and how it all ends. The cheater starts pretending that he has no idea what he is talking about and assumes that the guy has confused him with someone else. He started to talk about some kind of curse, but judging by Lei's husband's reaction, it was as if he really didn't understand what he was talking about and asked him to get a safe distance away from him. Or he'll refuse to say anything unless someone stands up for him, like the guards. It was at this moment that the princess came to them. Usually she greeted all the guests, but now she came to them and asked them what the commotion was about. She really didn't want the event to turn into some kind of showdown. Then she heard about some kind of curse and asked them to explain everything first. Who was hurt and who was to blame? Without thinking long, the guy told me that Edgar put a curse on his wife, and the guy won't stop repeating that he doesn't do it and doesn't know how to prove it. Moreover, he's very indignant that this stranger keeps ruining his reputation in front of the princess he's been building for more than a year. At this point, Victoria suggested that Edgar might actually do it, because last time he didn't even save his wife when she fell into the fountain, which proves the fact that he doesn't treat her very well and is quite capable of such a horrible act. And it's very outrageous. It turns out that since the princess knows how badly he treats his wife, it makes it even less likely that she'll treat him well at all, especially since she'll want to create some kind of relationship with him, even if he's single. In his defense, he says that he sincerely doesn't understand why everyone started accusing him without any proof. He says that he has nothing to do with it and demands not to accuse him before time. In that case, the princess asked to immediately invite a person who can lift the curse from Lei. And that's not all, she asked. All those in charge of guarding the grounds and security of the estate to make sure that from this day forward, then never show up here again. Meanwhile, the girl's friend wastes no time, and while her husband was investigating and fulfilling his promise, she secretly came to the Li to at least be close to him. She tried to wake her up, and surprisingly, she succeeded. Leia opens her eyes and doesn't even realize that there is a whole investigation going on, and even the princess found out about the situation. And it's because her friend didn't ignore the situation and wanted revenge on the person who did this to her. Even though the case hasn't been finalized yet, a lot has been done and at least a lot of people already hate her husband. This is good news even though he may turn out to be really not involved. He deserves it anyway. Her friend immediately started hugging her and confessed that Leia made her very nervous. She couldn't find her place and already imagined the terrible consequences. But luckily everything turned out okay, and she is very happy about it. They even stopped paying attention to the doctor, started talking about their own, and in fact, it proves the fact that sometimes even a simple conversation with a friend helps and calms down much better than any medication. At some point, Leia began to slowly remember everything before it all started. She remembers very well how she wanted to touch that arrow and saw some words on it, or rather, incomprehensible symbols, after which it all started. At this point, the doctor said that they had succeeded in lifting the curse, but unfortunately, there might be some consequences, and she should be prepared for that. Accordingly, someone should always be with her. It is very dangerous and undesirable to be alone. For starters, he advised her to stay in this room, not to go out, not to exert herself with heavy physical exertion, and also not to think about anything bad and not to talk to people who might spoil her mood. It's very important. After these words, her friend immediately began to throw out the doctors. Although they advised her to do so, she thanked them for their help and said that she hoped they would never see each other again. At the very last moment, they managed to say that if something is needed, the girl can call at any time. They will come and help in any way they can. After that, they both left, Lei at first remembering little by little, after which she passed out, and actually, she noticed a strange sensation, as if it wasn't really a curse, but it was all about those arrows. Even though the doctors advised her not to get out of bed, she did it anyway, because she wanted to see if the panther was around, because usually at times like this, it's always around. She starts looking all over the yard for her, but she's nowhere to be found, and she wants to thank her for her help, because if she'd left her in the woods, things might have ended up very differently. And then she went outside, first to walk around the territory, and does not even hide that she walks me just for fun. The girl decided that as long as no one sees, she has a great opportunity to go into the woods. Just a few minutes later, Leia saw the panther behind the bushes, which means that she had been here all this time and hadn't gone anywhere. This again proves that they have become true friends, and there is a care for her. It's a very nice meeting. Well, judging by the panther's look, she's obviously upset about something, probably very worried and afraid that no one will be able to help her. The girl told me that she was fine and asked me not to be upset, but instead thanked her and was afraid to imagine what she would do without her. You can see very well how much they missed each other, and it's such a beautiful moment. They don't think about anything else. Leah started to enjoy the moment, and even started to feel a little sad that she can't introduce her to her other friend. As soon as they started talking and stopped noticing everything around them, the panther was seen by her friend. Like any other person, she got scared and started protecting Leah. She took her umbrella and asked the girl to move away with the words that she would deal with this animal now and she would be safe. Leia turned around and asked her to calm down. She said she would explain everything now and warned her that she was fine. She said that this is her second friend, whom she recently met in the woods, and that it was this panther that brought her home when she passed out. Of course, the friend was very surprised and doesn't even know what to do about it now. She looked at this panther, who clearly doesn't look like a cute animal, though really there's no surprise here because just now she was about to be attacked by a human and she's just defending herself like that. The situation is a bit complicated and unusual. We can only hope that Leah can calm each of them down and it will end calmly and slowly. After a while, the friend started to apologize. She explained that when Leah went missing, she was very scared, especially when she saw her next to the panther. She also almost fainted and miraculously stayed on her feet. At some point, the panther began to approach her to feel if she was a good person or not. The girl was very frightened and thought it was very dangerous. She didn't even notice how I accidentally started defending myself and picked up that umbrella again, and then calmed down in time to apologize. And after a while, the situation was repeated, so as not to get angry. The panther allowed them to be alone and decided to leave, although it was very difficult for her to do so. No matter how much Leia tries to reassure her friend, she still can't get used to the fact that this animal can be trusted and not afraid of danger. In fact, she is very lucky that the panther understands everything, because even after the first situation, any other animal could have gotten very angry and attacked her, and then no apology would have helped her. Afterward, they began to talk quietly about their affairs, and she told him that her husband had gone to deal with Edgar, and he was doing well. He had succeeded in getting the princess to treat him badly, and consequently, he would never fulfill his dream of marrying Victoria. The girl promised that she will do her best to make this man answer for all the bad things he has done to her, because he deserves it. She also says that he is very lucky that she is a kind person and not as cruel as him. The main thing she has managed to achieve so far is that the princess treats him badly. The second thing is that everyone already knows about how he doesn't love his wife and what he does to her, and that in general, he is a very cruel person who can't be trusted, as it seems to her. This is more than enough, but she doesn't plan to stop there. He's done too many bad things, and this is just the beginning. So, she just wishes him the strength and patience to deal with all the things she's planned against him. Of course, the girl is very grateful for this, but she never thought that it would go this far. She also wanted to take revenge on him. But after this, she even wants to pity him. Her friend was very surprised and reminded that such people should not be pitied, because when he treated her badly, probably never once thought about whether it was cruel or not, he just did it and betrayed her as soon as he had such an opportunity, without a drop of shame and regret. On the one hand, the girl understands perfectly well that her friend is right, but on the other hand, she is too kind a person to respond so cruelly even to her husband, who has done far more wrong than he has received in return. Either way, she concluded that at the very least she can trust this person, and knows that her friend would do anything for her. It was evening, and only now the friend's husband found out that she had come to this place, although he asked her to stay at home and not to interfere in this case. Now she does not know how to explain her behavior, and hopes that he just understands her and forgives her, because she just wanted what was best and could not leave her friend in such a difficult situation alone. He started to understand the situation and asked for some explanations. His wife replied that everything was clear, and she didn't quite understand what she had done wrong. Then she realized that her husband was saying all the right things, and at the very least she had broken the contract. So it wouldn't hurt to admit fault and apologize, since he had done a good thing, although he could have said he had plenty of other things to do and wasn't interested in it. She just didn't think about it right away and ended up apologizing. The guy was immediately happy and then also apologized for yelling at her and explained that he understood. So it was okay, and he wasn't mad at her. Leah felt too awkward after that. She didn't want her problem to become everyone else's problem. It involved too many people, even though no one owed her anything. She didn't even know how to thank in a way that would fully express her gratitude. The friend replies that everyone would do that, and that the girl should not blame herself for it, because it is normal when friends help each other, and it is not necessary to ask for it, so they should not even discuss it. These words calmed her down a bit, but still, not completely. In the end, the girl decided that now she should think about the divorce and do everything to make it happen as soon as possible, and said she'd be happy to help her with that too if needed. Plus, she had no other business at all and could be her personal assistant in the near future. Who would love to take part in helping to get revenge and ruin the life of that villain? In her opinion, they should do the best they can to the best of their abilities and capabilities. Then they discussed that today they would have to go back to their friend's house, as it was not advisable to stay here, in which case Leah asked them to wait for a while, because she had to say goodbye to someone. Of course, with a beautiful panther that she would love to take with her. But unfortunately, she has to stay in her usual habitat and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to accept it and get over it. The girl does not even want to imagine how she will say these words and how the panther will react. But still, she must do it, because the time left is getting shorter and shorter. To begin with, so as not to upset her, the girl said hello and said she had something for her. She had brought several kinds of treats for her, and among them, there was sure to be something she would like, as she already knew that the panther didn't like everything, and it was very hard to please her, especially when it came to food. Afterward, they had a little picnic and started talking afterward. How great it was that they had met and become real friends. Then she offered her the pie, though she was afraid that the panther would get angry again and would not try anything. But this time, a miracle happened, and she ate the piece after all. It looked so appetizing that the panther almost ate that pie with her hand. Of course, actually there was nothing wrong with that, and the girl's hand remained unharmed. She wasn't even scared of it. On the contrary, she smiled and was happy that she liked everything very much. Then they started hugging again, and it was time to break the very unpleasant news. As much as she didn't want to, her friend and her husband were waiting for her, and they wanted to go home very badly. When suddenly, she didn't even have time to say anything about it. The panther started asking for the girl to climb on her back. It was like she wanted to take her somewhere, like the first time she saw a beautiful place. Leah didn't refuse, because she was sure it was worth it, and she was doing it for a reason. Of course it was a little scary at first, but then she got used to it and stopped thinking about it. As soon as she was fully on top of her, the panther accelerated very quickly, literally. In a matter of seconds, they were already on the other side of the forest. The girl never thought that it could accelerate to such a speed. She didn't even have time to notice how it happened. At one point, she was very scared. But then she calmed down and just trusted her, because she realizes that the panther will definitely not harm her and controls everything. So everything is safe and completely under her control. And that wasn't all. After that, they started to accelerate even faster, which made Leia even stop seeing everything around her. Everything was so blurry that she just closed her eyes and waited for them to stop. And finally, the panther stopped. It took a few minutes for Leah to realize what had just happened and to generally get used to stopping. It was as if she could still feel that speed and feel herself in motion, as if they hadn't stopped yet. After that, she started to notice everything around her. She looked at these beautiful views and realized that it was really worth it. They were in yet another beautiful place that was even more beautiful than the previous one. She is certainly grateful for this wonderful tour because she doesn't want to go anywhere else. She has a strange feeling. On the one hand, she has to leave, but on the other hand, something seems to make her stay here. They started to walk around this area, and as it turned out, there is even a different energy, atmosphere. And in general, Leia feels naturally much more pleasant. Probably because few people come here and don't leave bad energy like in other places. Suddenly, something happened that the girl could not expect from her friend. She pushed her right into the water and did not even warn about it. It's strange and unclear why she did it, if the panther knew or sensed that the girl had to leave. And so it would take her at least a few hours for her clothes to dry and she could go back. Though maybe she was just playing with her, and there was no plan as one might think. Of course, Leah popped out of the water and started to resent it. She didn't expect it and complains that she shouldn't have done that. Plus, she doesn't really like being in the water. The panther didn't even pay attention to it. She also went into the water and started swimming calmly, as if nothing bad had happened. And she didn't care at all that Leia wasn't very happy about it. At some point, she forgot about everything and began to enjoy the moment because perhaps everything is going exactly as it should. She even begins to like everything very much. Because if you look at it from the other side of the situation, nothing bad has happened, and the friend can wait because she herself said how she was tired of being at home. And that's not all. At that moment, the most interesting thing happened during their whole acquaintance. Leah doesn't realize anything, starts stroking the panther, after which it instantly turns into some guy. It's impossible to believe. Leah didn't expect this and doesn't even know how to react to it. She didn't think that a panther was so special that she could turn into a human, and that all this time she wasn't an animal, but a guy in a panther's body. Now I see why she understood human speech and seemed so special. Very interesting what will happen next and how the guy will explain it. The first thing he did was to smile and say his name. It turns out he had one, and his name is Yang. Did he bring her to this place from the beginning and throw her into the water on purpose to show his real face in this situation? Of course, her first reaction was quite natural. She began to scream at the whole forest because she could not even think that this could happen to her, and her friend Panther will be a guy who all this time hid the truth from her. But in fact, there is nothing wrong with it. so it turned out even more interesting. Ian continues to smile and does his best to keep the situation from getting out of hand, because the girl could react anyone, and maybe even be offended that he didn't show his face to her sooner. And that's not all. The situation doesn't end there. The guy suddenly proposes to her to start dating and become a couple, it turns out. He liked her from the very first day, and only now he decided to make this first step. He specially chose this place. He thought for a long time how to do it, and now everything depends only on her. Of course, he'd imagined it a little better, since she'd ended up passing out again, and it wasn't surprising, though he still had every chance of a relationship. At the very least, she hadn't given her answer yet, and things could still change at any moment. He was very frightened and thought that it had been too sudden, and perhaps he shouldn't have scared her like that, or at least he could have warned her. But there was no turning back the clock. He would have to fix the situation. He began to help her to regain consciousness, for he felt that it was not so bad. She was not completely unconscious and could still hear him. He immediately began to apologize and warned that if she was offended or did not want to communicate with him, then so be it. He would not detain her and force anything. He would accept any of her decisions. The main thing that she did not resent him and not afraid. As suddenly the girl smiled, which means that everything is not so bad. After that, he began to look into her eyes carefully to get a sense of what she was thinking about all this, and whether she intended to run away at the first opportunity, which he would very much not want to do. When he felt that the situation had improved a little, he started to confess his feelings and proposed to live together. And after that, he hugged her so hard that she definitely couldn't run away anywhere. Leah has not fully realized the situation and has forgotten that she has a friend waiting for her. I wonder how she will react to this and whether she will agree to such an interesting and unusual proposal. In fact, right now, she was more interested in not that at all, but how a panther could turn into a human, and then thought that maybe it was much simpler than that, and she was actually in a dream. Also, this guy did seem quite cute to her, but just because he's only showing his real face now, she has a lot of doubts and questions she'd like to ask him. She's really interested in him, and in fact, she really wants Jan's words to be true, and not another ruse like her husband. Now she is even afraid to admit to herself that she also liked him very much, and she really wouldn't refuse such an offer. But first, it would be good to get to know him better and get some time to think things over and make a final decision, even though he just asked her a direct question. At the same time, he doesn't give her a chance to say a single word. He keeps kissing her and hugging her as if he knows in advance that she will agree and that today she will become his girlfriend. Long ago, humans and beasts fought for control of this star. A dragon lord led the beasts, a great witch, the protector of humanity. After a fierce battle, made an agreement. The side that unites with the other and survives will control the star. Thus, the mythical beasts began to come in contact with humans. Fate was to decide who would survive. After 300 years, apparently resigned to her fate and left with the some who loved humans remained. These were the imperial family, the Kanjin, known to be descended from mythical beasts. Born as beasts, they grew up in human form. They possess great strength, human wisdom, and mystical abilities. The imperial family naturally began to rule but after the Dragon Lord left, the mythical powers weakened. After the battle, the children of these creatures began to manifest even among the imperial family. Although they possessed the powers of beasts, those who were born fully human became nobles. Yang was the last true mythical beast born in the last 10 years, so he doesn't have many friends and acquaintances like himself. Emperor Leonard was recently talking about this topic and wondering what to make of the fact that Yang doesn't turn into a human for a long time like everyone else does. The royal princess always reassured him and reminded him that it will happen. Yang just needs to grow up a little, as he's not an adult yet and doesn't know how to do it. She believes that everything will happen, but in time, and it's not something to worry about, much less take it as something abnormal. They had so many conversations about it, and almost everyone told him the same thing, that he just didn't need to be bothered, and everything would happen on its own. as it should. A girl from the royal family asked to entrust this case to her. At first, no one knew with what intention she was saying this and what she was going to do. But the emperor agreed, because he did not want to wait long and could not wait to see John's face in human form. From that moment, some time passed, and when the lad was 16, he was finally able to turn into a man, and the emperor calmed down. Though, as it turned out, they found it even harder to communicate with him after that. He disliked many things, and he always wanted to live in a single. In the end, he managed to escape from his family, and from that moment, he lived by himself in the forest like a real panther. Thanks to his appearance, he was not approached by other animals, and many were even afraid of him. So he felt safe and not afraid of anyone. He told the girl this story, and now she knows everything about him. Before, she didn't even realize it was much more interesting than she thought it was. It turns out that his relatives went to the forest many times to find him and bring him home, but he didn't give a single chance. He had to defend himself and fight them, as they didn't understand otherwise. They went back to him several times, and each time it was as if they forgot the previous ones and talked to him with full confidence that they would be able to persuade him. But they didn't succeed. And he also has a brother who is very much like him. He also doesn't want to live with his relatives and sometimes came to his place in the forest, but not to avoid, but just to play around. They had fun with him all the time. And Jan had to look around all the time so that no one would suddenly find out that he could turn into a human. Everyone knows him as a panther. And if some animal saw him like that, it could attack him and his brother as well. So he asked him not to stay and play for no longer than half an hour so that everyone would be safe. And fortunately the boy understood this, although he often did not want to go home because he had not played, and it was never enough time for him. Jan explained that it was necessary, and he himself wasn't thrilled that they had such restrictions. But since there was nothing that could be done about it, he asked them to just accept it and get over it, since they had no other options. Of course, they were not always able to remain unnoticed, and at such times they had to get rid of those who could attack them. It was cruel. But these are the rules of the forest. Whoever attacks first is the one who stays alive. Because his brother has seen this kind of thing too often, he has been used to it since childhood and has learned the rule. And in fact, he's even grateful to his brother for such advice and lessons, because they don't teach this kind of thing in regular school. There were times when their sister would often try to coax the younger brother to bring the older one along, but he never listened to her and always said that if Jan wanted to, he would come back, and if not, he would never force him, much less deceive him in such a way. Moreover, the boy knew that his brother could not always get his own food in such conditions, so he brought it with him while no one could see. He constantly took care of him and showed him that he could be trusted. They often made a fire and talked about different topics like true brothers. Jan was always grateful to him and couldn't imagine how he would survive here without his help. There were never any secrets between them, but rather told each other everything that happened in their lives, exchanged with advice and secrets. Thus, his brother became the only relative with whom John socialized and whom he did not hate in the slightest. His brother replaced his friend and all the others. The boy often thanked the fate that he had such a brother, because it turns out that if it was not for him, at least Jan could not last so long in the forest without food, and if he had only a sister, she obviously would not have done as much as his brother did. Also, they chose a special place where they could see each other. It was very far away from where people live. It was difficult to get here. Moreover, there was no special road to get here. You had to go through bushes and dense forests. Sometimes, of course, Ian would get something, but it wasn't very often. It was rare in this area, but sometimes it happened. But one day, there was one very unpleasant situation. Somehow, inexplicably, they were found by relatives, but they managed to hide in time. They heard familiar voices and immediately realized that it was definitely about her. Jan understood that if they saw him here, nothing good would come out of it. So he asked his brother to go to them, and he decided to hide and run away somewhere far away. Besides, he was very upset because they had found his hiding place where he could hide from them, which meant that now he would have to find a new place which would be much farther away. It could take a long time, so they had to stop communicating with their brother for a while until Jan could find a new place that would be much safer than this one. They were both unhappy with the idea, but there was no other way. They had to put up with it and wait for a while. They said goodbye for a long time and could not believe that the relatives were much smarter than they thought. They were absolutely sure that this place was absolutely secret and there was no way to get in. Moreover, even after they were determined to say goodbye, the younger brother didn't go anywhere but just stayed close by. And when Jan saw this, he asked what was wrong and reminded them that everyone's safety depended on it, and they had no other choice. Because of his age, the younger brother didn't fully understand this and often just laughed back, which made the older brother very angry. He didn't know how else to explain that if he didn't leave now, he would only make things worse. In the end, the younger brother somehow miraculously persuaded the older one not to split up, but just to run away quickly somewhere the others couldn't get to, at least not anytime soon. In return, he even brought a large basket of food, and it worked. The next day, they came to the same place with the river and decided that this would be their new home. They liked it very much at once. They didn't even want to look for something else. When Jan first came here, he had a feeling that this was a place that could change his life. He didn't even realize that he would meet Leah and bring her here. It turns out that she was the first person he dared and trusted enough to show her this place. At that moment, he was fully convinced that, apart from his brother, he would never have a man in whom he would trust completely and not doubt him. And that's not all. It turns out that even when some time had passed and he pretended to be a panther and started talking to the girl, the younger brother was watching them all the time. He was so good at it that she never saw him once and couldn't even think that someone was watching them. Ian was used to not trusting anyone at that point, which is why he didn't show his face for so long, even to her. And when he realized that she was the one he could no longer live without, he made up his mind, first showing her face, and then telling her about himself and explaining why he was only doing it now. He spent a very long time checking her out, looking her over and trying to feel if she was the person who deserved to see the real him, and finally realized that he wasn't wrong and she was exactly what he needed. When he is near her, he has a feeling as if he has been looking and waiting for her all his life. But at the same time, he cannot realize that it turns out that their fate agreed. And if she once did not end up in the forest, they would never even met. Moreover, if you remember that she originally came here because of her husband when she ran away from him, you could say that part of the reason they met was because of him.